Hi, I wanted to. I've been looking into how to best map the EEGsynth to the modular and to Ableton, with the problem that MIDI has, that it is very coarse and it also often has very limits on how many channels you can use. If you use a note value, pitch values, it's from 0 to 127. It's on one channel only. So if you want to map different parameters, you're either going to be very sort of stepwise, and if you're going to use it in tracks and with maybe more complicated velocities and what have you, you'll have it will be hard to integrate different MIDI tracks, especially live, because it's one track per MIDI channel. And in general, it's, especially on Windows, it's also a bit of a hassle of routing MIDI internally. And so it's also so I've been looking into OSC. It's much better, much more flexible, as much resolution as you want, and much easier to integrate in, for example, Max MSP and Pure Data and some other cool new programs I'm going to look into soon. Ableton has a relatively recent, I think, connections kit, which allows you here to monitor and to map OSC signals, OSC signals commands to pretty much everything. It overlaps mostly with what you could map with MIDI, and I think that's what Pear is already doing. But this would be the same idea, a little bit more modern, a little bit more flexible, but a couple of little things you're not able to do. For example, you're not able to map to the start and stop buttons, things like this. You're able to do it by converting it back to MIDI and stuff like this, but I don't want to do that. There might be a way of doing it, but maybe I just haven't found it yet. But let me show you. I think this is very sufficient for our purposes already. So I'm just using, for now, I'm using Touch OSC. So if I move a slider, you can see it in the monitor here. And just like with the MIDI mapping, you can learn. Let's do the first one. And then it can be mapped on any other feature. I already had it mapped to the frequency here. So if you would play something, so this would be this could be obviously alpha power or something like that, easily mapped. We can go to, can learn another one, another channel that's already set on the resonance of one filter, but let's select what we want. We say, actually, I want the resonance of the first filter. So now that is mapped. And say, I want the third slider to map on the wavetable. Will that work? Yeah, that will work. Okay, so if we then play, we can easy as pie. To set this up, you have a couple of parameters, and you have to be on the network, on the same network, and you have to disable your firewall. That was something that that stopped me for an hour or two until I figured that one out. Okay, so very flexible, very good, very easy. It maps onto pretty much everything. You could map it. You could map something on I don't know, this volume, track volume. Then we learn this one. Okay, and now, as you can see here, So pretty much the same as with MIDI, but one cool thing here, for example, is you can change the curve from exponential to linear to hyperbolic, the other way around, and you can more easily set the minimum and the maximum. So I mean that probably would help you a lot already. Okay. So that was that part. Then Ableton also now has a package to control gear as an interface to modular using CV, especially these DC coupled audio cards like the Expert Sleepers ES9. So this is CV Tools, and let's take a look at the CV instrument. Let's make a new track. The problem here is that it does start from MIDI, so it's kind of stupid, but it's also understandable that everything that happens within Ableton is pretty much MIDI. You know, notes, pitches, velocities, and things like this. And what it can't do, I think, is directly is map any automation that you have in a track to a CV. You'll have to either automate velocity or pitch, and then that you can send through. But that means that you have to go back to MIDI or through MIDI to CV, and that which means that you have your very small, low bitrate, small number of values that you can choose from. So it becomes very stepwise again. But then again, it is kind of cool that they have it. So for example, one thing that I think is the coolest, so you have what you can do is you can send out envelopes and oscillators and things like that, so it's not too bad. And you can draw your shape, which is very, very, very cool. You can have make whatever shape you want. It's very cool. And then it can loop. But for the purpose of the EEGsynth, what you might want to play with is, for example, the velocities and the let me see why it's this not working. So it gets its MIDI information from the key step. That's fine. Voila, we have to prime it. So now you can see it picks up the velocity and things like the mod wheel. And so maximum velocity, small velocity. But the mod wheel is cool. And so that we can send out to the first output on the ES9, the first sort of those 8 separate outputs, which starts at 9, by the way. It goes from 9 to 16. So first one, second one, I hope you can see that. Okay, so this is kind of cool, and this you can play with, but to map the EEGsynth to the ES9 via Ableton then means that you have to go to MIDI and then send out values like velocity, or for that matter pitch. Pitch works also directly. And then you can smooth it out a little bit afterwards. There's functionality there in the utilities. So you can do a bit of there's a little bit of flexibility, but really not that much, and it's all a little bit complicated, I have to say, to make it work. So yeah, so one thing is you can easily send out just your just audio to an output. So, for instance, from the synth. But yeah, I don't know why you would want to do that. That's not really what CV is for, perhaps. But you can. Well, it's not true. Anyway, so that you can do some you can do a lot of stuff with these CV tools. It's just for the EEGsynth, not that clear how we would use it. For that, I was thinking of using. I think Pure Data is better. So let me close this. And let's go to Pure Data. So I have a very small patch here where I could have used that. I can use either the Touch OSC or I have the sliders here, and these sliders are also picked up by Ableton. I closed Ableton too quickly, but you could have seen that I can do the same via Pure Data as via the Touch OSC. And these I can directly map to the different outputs, the different channels of the sound card. So I should be able to, voila, there we go, directly. You have to set up the audio as ASIO and then make sure you have enough channels. But once it works. And of course you can do, now it's in Pure Data, you can do a lot of different things. So for example, just simply adding an oscillator to the signal, and then we can use the CV to go up and down. Well, and this can all be clearly programmed with the EEGsynth. The EEGsynth, this can read the EEGsynth. The EEGsynth can send OSC signals to this patch, and then this patch can directly route it in whatever way we want to the sound card. And with Ableton, it seems that you have to relearn every time you start up the software again or the OSC again. I'm not sure why it's a bug. It might not be a bug everywhere. And I don't like all this learning stuff either. But if you go to CVs out, you can hard code, say, you can directly route it, and every time you start it up, it will be the same. So yeah, so if you can avoid Ableton and you want to use the modular, then Pure Data is really a very cool and smooth way of creating control voltages with the ES9. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna Bitwig. I've been looking into Bitwig, which is amazing. It's so smooth. It's so efficient. It's so clearly aimed to use with modular, or to at least modulate internally as well. It's got a really nice level of simplicity versus complexity. But its integration of OSC is very limited. There's one package written by somebody else which integrates OSC messages, but it does it pretty much by using MIDI commands again, so note on and off and stuff like this, like a virtual keyboard, to be able to use OSC more flexibly, like really as a control signal. I might need to write my own API or write my own interface using their API. That's written in Java and JavaScript. It might be possible. I'm looking into it. There's some really good documentation, it seems. So that might be another way to go. And Bitwig is really good with these control voltages and with the ES9. That integration is just perfect. So if we can get OSC into Bitwig, that will be really the dream scenario. But it's very disappointing that everything always seems to be going through MIDI so far. So that's for next time. Ciao.